Question there was about investigating or transparency in government, and we mentioned Maryland got a D minus in the report that looked at it a couple years ago. What are you going to do to further that? And I can say one thing as someone who covers the State House, there are no webcams in the State House itself. It's all audio streaming, and a lot of that in the General Assembly. So things like that, there was just a bill passed a couple years ago that helps people track who gets what money from whom as far as senators and delegates. So what sorts of things are you going to look at there if you're governor to get that up from a D minus?
Yeah, I actually think a D minus is probably a generous grade with grade inflation. Maryland could not be worse in terms of transparency and open government. That's how, when they went into the closed room in the first place for the Affordable Care Act, they ended up with getting a company to do technology from Fargo, North Dakota. Great movie. Not sure I want them doing my technology. So we have a whole proposal about that. And to your point about opening up the government, shedding light on government, making sure people are accountable for what it is they do. In the Affordable Care Act is another example where you can't fix it without knowing what's going wrong. But the machine and the status quo has sort of said, well, let's look at that after the election instead of having hearings on it. And so I think it's important, when the lieutenant governor doesn't give over his emails, doesn't give over his minutes, doesn't show up at hearings. I think that's a problem in terms of transparency. In terms of the campaign finance that you just touched on, I created a bipartisan commission to look at campaign finance reform because we desperately need that as well in Maryland. And we came up with 27 proposals. About 13 or 14 have now been enacted into law, but we have a lot further to go. Some of this stuff, Anthony Brown, the lieutenant governor, took tens of thousands of dollars from Jeffrey Thompson, the guy that brought down Vincent Gray, who's pled guilty to that. And then he laundered that money through an organization and kept the rest and took a lot of money from other convicted felons and people that have been in trouble. And, nobody knows about that because we don't have that kind of transparency. I think we ought to have a lot more transparency. I think we really desperately need to tighten up our campaign finance laws.